Great. Thanks for the introduction, Wendy. Hi, guys. We've all been there, right? We're trying to do the right thing, but sometimes it seems like a no-win situation. Remember when you were a kid and the first time you heard heads I win, tails you lose, it was amusing? It's not as amusing in a professional setting. Can you relate to this example? Let's see. Here's the scenario. It's Friday at 4:30. Why do all emergencies seem to happen at Friday at 4:30? You've got clients coming in from out of town for a big demo on Monday. 4 out of 5 features are working. One of them, they discovered a glitch. Overtime to fix it's going to cost about $5,000. You try to reach your boss. The voicemail says, "Sorry, I'm out of town with no cell service until Sunday night." What do you do? Now, I'm going to limit you to a couple of options for this little thought experiment. Option A, take it on yourself to authorize overtime. Have some contractors work Saturday and Sunday with a reasonable belief that that means the feature is going to be ready for Monday. Or decide right now that we're going to delete that feature from the demo and demonstrate the other 4. Now, I personally hate multiple choice tests. Some of you might be able to think of additional options. Stop it. This is a thought experiment. Cut me some slack. There's also context information that would influence your decisions. How important is this client? What's your history with the boss? How important is this particular feature to the client? Okay, so let's just assume for purposes of our silly discussion that the client's important. The boss is new. You don't have much relationship or history. And the feature is medium importance. So for our purposes, forgive me, I'm going to limit you to just 2 options. So give it your best call. All right. For the moment, let's assume you chose A and authorized the overtime. We're playing choose your own adventure here. You authorize the overtime. What happens? The presentation goes well, but afterwards, your boss is upset and reads you the riot act. You don't have the authority to prove overtime. If I'd have known, we could have omitted that feature. And, most of us have been there. But the nice thing about choose your own adventure in a hypothetical situation? You can back up and try again. Remember, your options were A, authorize the overtime, and B, bump the function from the demo. What would have happened if we'd have chosen B? Well, maybe what happens is the presentation goes pretty well. You explain to the client that here's 4 out of the 5 functions. We hit a small speed bump over the weekend, and we're going to have the 5th function for you later this week. Afterwards, your boss takes you aside and says, "Hey, you should have authorized overtime to fix this over the weekend. We brought the client in from out of town. We only showed him 4 out of the 5 functions." Well, hang on. That's a heads I win, tails you lose. In that constrained little experiment, there really wasn't a right answer. Now, I don't know your boss. I'm not suggesting he or she is a jerk. If that's true, it was just a lucky guess. No, not really. Here's the deal. What we're talking about here is human nature. It's a piece of human nature that we need to really understand. It's easy to find fault with the boss, but we have all been guilty of this in some ways. Someone, a spouse, a friend, a team member, a child, makes a decision without consulting us, and although it sort of works out, it's easy in hindsight to find fault with the cost or the timing or the outcome. So, for example, you're loosely planning a party with somebody, and they buy the cake, and afterwards you find yourself saying, I was really jammed up, and I appreciate you getting the cake for the party, but if you'd have called, I could have told you that chocolate was Mary's favorite. However, if you'd have taken a call in the middle of a busy workday, maybe in a meeting, from the friend saying, "Hey, what kind of cake does Mary like?" You might have said instead, "I can't believe you called me at work. Chocolate's her favorite, but I'm really busy, and anything you got would have been fine." And I want to pause here for each of you to think of a time when you might have been a little guilty of this. And then I want to explore how can we reduce the likelihood of this happening to you. Okay? My early career was built on a simple rule. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. And I took a lot of risks. I got a lot of things done, and sometimes I was lucky, and sometimes I got myself into trouble. But as my career has progressed, I've refined this rule because I realized this rule sort of assumes I can read your mind, that I'm feeling confident that I understand what you want enough that I can guess and that you're going to back me up. The latter half of my career, I've refined this rule. And what I'm asking about is, how can I serve you better? And so what this talk is really about is how to have a conversation to clarify priorities and authority before you need them. And then if the situation comes up, we're going to seek to confirm them, but we want to have enough of a conversation that we can act with some confidence. Imagine I'm working on a software project for you. The schedule and resources are tight. Scope and quality aren't negotiable. Something has to give. Do you want me to push the team so hard that your best developers are likely to leave so that we can hit the target date? Or slip the target date? This is a judgment call senior management should make. If the future of the company depends on hitting the target, senior management might be willing to sacrifice a couple of team members in order to do it. Those are unpleasant choices. On the other hand, slipping the date and preserving the team might be a better strategic choice. Leaders get to decide. All you can do is make recommendations. I recently said that during a conference panel, and the person sitting next to me thought I was abdicating my responsibility as a project manager or seeking plausible deniability for the outcome. Not at all. This is a sponsor decision. It's not a project manager decision. I might have a recommendation, but the choice isn't mine. And my specialty is project management, so I'm going to use the word sponsor and boss sort of interchangeably to talk about the person above me in my chain of command that I'm going to go to with questions. Whatever word works for you, forgive me, I'm going to toggle between those two. Anyway, questions about priority and authority sounds pretty straightforward. But actually, it can take some confidence and practice and some coaching to be effective. And that's really what I want to talk about. How can we ask these questions that to get information about priority and authority without breaking glass and without offending people? And let's get the squishy stuff out of the way first. It takes some confidence to have the conversations and ask the questions that we're talking about. Well, why does it take courage if what we're trying to do is serve our leadership? If we're going to be a good steward of organizational resources, we have to know our sponsor's goal. And if we're going to make recommendations consistent with their goals, we have to know their priorities. This is a really important point. It's a sign of maturity to acknowledge that you can't read people's minds. It took me a while to sort that out. I could guess what you're thinking. I could guess what your priorities are. What I really need to do is ask, and that can seem uncomfortable. But here's a way to frame it. If someone working for you was unclear about your goals and priorities, would you rather they guessed or asked? Asking takes confidence because it exposes the fact that you don't know everything and you can't read people's minds. It might make some people think, oh, wait a minute, is that ignorant, right? Are you ignorant? Why are you uncertain? Why aren't you being decisive? But think about it. What's the alternative? If we don't know what the boss's, the sponsor's goals or priorities are, we can guess or we can ask. I want to encourage you, there's no shame in asking. But I want to give you some tips for doing this and how to frame this conversation that might make you feel a little more comfortable. There's no shame in not being able to read a sponsor's mind. I'm not sure why people expect it. But here's some framing questions or framing